Well, you've got the mic.
What are you doing, Hugh?
I'm going to ask everybody to introduce themselves. Say hello.
Hello, I'm Jenny.
Are you looking forward to this, Jenny?
Oh, absolutely. It's a lovely evening. It's great to be out.
And
I'm Heather.
Heather, tell us about yourself, Heather.
I'm so looking forward to listening to Frank's words of wisdom.
Brilliant, brilliant. There's Barbara.
Hello, Hugh.
Hello, Barbara.
Everybody.
Hello, Fiona.
Hello, Hugh.
Seamus Daly,
Your baby brother.
baby brother with the short trousers, look.
Yeah. Well, sure, summer.
And here's
Hello, Hugh.
there's a local man,
Yes.
born up the road here.
Born up the road, just up the corner there. That's
And this lady here came a bit of a distance
Just like you,
from Liganeel.
yes. Ballyutog.
Ballyutog. See, and with your brother.
he's from Poyntzpass.
Poyntzpass man.
And I'm from Banbridge Historical,
Very good.
Florence Chambers.
Very good.
Yeah.
Hiya, Florence.
From
Hope you enjoyed
Dromore.
this. Yes. Moving across here then to Master Savage.
Good to be out again.
Good to be out,
back
yes.
to square one again with the old gang.
Hi guys.
How you going?
Introduce yourselves.
I'm Mark and this is Michael.
I hope you enjoy it. Hope you enjoy it.
Looking forward to it.
Fantastic. This has all been YouTube now.
James from Dromore behind us
James.
here.
Oh, fantastic. Yes, yes.
And Catherine.
And Catherine.
With James, yeah.
Okay, yeah. And this is our money finder.
Indeed. I find out money. Hi, okay.
Okay, good stuff. And we'll move on here.
Hello, Hugh. Una's here.
Una here.
Yes.
And Aidan.
I'm Aidan, yes.
And Philly Daly.
Your big brother.
And finally, Joe Devlin.
Right, you.
That's the introduction, son.
Very welcome. This townland, just by the way, the old road, it used to be the main road from Uri to Acton and Tandragee, and it would have been not up until about 1800 sometime that the new road was built. Is this our tractor or is it the tractor?
So,
Hugh. Hello, Hugh.
yes.
Hello, Hugh.
Hello, Bernadette.
How you doing?
Are you looking forward to this?
I am very much so. Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
good. Hope you enjoy it. Introduce yourself.
I'm Roisin and it's
Roisin.
nice to meet you, yeah.
Thank you, Roisin. And
Deirdre, good evening.
Gertie. And moving on.
Yes.
Hi guys. This is a cameraman tonight, so introduce yourself. Okay. Oh, introduce yourself.
My name is Ian Copeland.
And you're looking forward to this?
I am indeed.
And who is this? Hello.
How you doing, Frank? Hugh, how are you?
See a good number, so at this moment I'm going to turn you over to our esteemed guide for the night, Mr. Frank Waters, expert historian. Frank, it's all yours from now on.
We had nearly finished the walk there, Roy, by the way. This is the old road, and it used to be the main road from Uri to Acton and on to Tandragee. And the road went across there and up the side of that and out just the side of Agnews or the Deer Park. And then there's bits of the road for the new main road, which was made around 1800, runs on top of this. Just to say we're in the townland of Kilboda here, and in the parish of Lower Killeeby. But once we go down here, just to this wee bridge, we're into Demone townland. So, first thing. By the way, if you have any questions, keep them to yourselves. No, if you have any questions, don't be afraid to ask them. Are the remnants of a flax mill. It was a Scotch mill. And it was powered by the stream which is behind you there. And the stream goes down along there, but there was a mill race which came onto the road here. And it was a Scotch mill in the flax Flax and redding the flax and went to the Scotch mill where the hard outer fibres were knocked off and the fibres which were eventually turned into linen cloth were left. And this particular mill was owned certainly in the 19th century by a man called Robert McEwen. We would say McEwen, but he didn't put a K in his name. It's Mac, E-W-E-N. And his brother owned the farm and big house at the top of the hill, and he owned this mill and he owned various other properties up the hill here. But he doesn't appear to have been a miller himself, and he hired or employed or let out the mill, I'm not sure, but from 1870 on, the miller was a man called Stratton. Locally that name was pronounced Stratton, and the Strattons were all millers. They seem to come here from Ballymacarati Beg, which is a townland where Roy family live out there in the county down, and they had a couple of mills in the mill town, Glen area, and every time I looked up the name Stratton, the word miller seemed to be stuck to it. They were all millers, mill carpenters, millwrights, the whole family, and they seem to have started off from Newton Ards and generally spread. The mills up the the river from Poyntzpass up towards Tullinacross, there were two mills there. The millers there were Strattons as well. But that is why they came here in the first instance to be millers, and this was a Scotch mill. Scotch mills were apparently very vulnerable to fires because the sheds of this that were knocked off were very dry and flammable. Any questions? No questions. Fine. To the Poyntzpass side of the Gate Lodge, and on this side of the road there was the mill pond, which conserved the water for that mill, and there was a sluice gate a little way up. There was sometimes a bit of friction between the canal people and the millers, but the canal people wanted the water and the miller wanted the water as well. So sometimes whenever the canal was low, they would want the miller to open a sluice and let water out. But I suppose to some extent a flax mill would be seasonal. It wouldn't necessarily be flat out all the time. Anyway, the next wee place here, this wee house on the left, a certain dispute has arisen between myself and Alfie Donald, and Alfie speaks with an authority which I could not match. My father always referred to this as Hughie Stratton's shop, and he told a tale of how himself and a few of his colleagues as young lads around the First World War time were out hunting on a Sunday.
So the audience is behind you, but the speaker's pointing behind you. Sorry, but hold on.
You're all tangled. You're all tangled up.
It's always very demeaning when a pupil comes and talks to the master. No, and my father, as a young fella, with a few of his friends, apparently were out on a Sunday hunting, and they came here and they went to Hughie Stratton's, who lived up on the right here, to look to buy something out of his shop, and he chased them. And my father often quoted what Hughie Stratton said to him was that it was a holy and a wry day. W-R-Y, not right. But I always thought is this switched on?
Keep it closer to your mouth.
Right. Thank you, Joy. Thank you very much. You keep me right.
Keep him right.
Alfie Donald pointed out that this was not the shop, because the shop was up on the house up here. So I stand corrected on that. I looked it up, and this in 1901 there was a family called McClelland lived here. Now apparently this house was never any bigger than it is now, and at one stage there was a father, mother-in-law and 4 children living in this house. So you'd have to say to yourself, where the devil did they put them? But and it was not a happy house, in the sense that a short time after the child was born, or rather the mother died. The father married again. His second wife conceived a child, but before it was born the father died. So it was just all the houses in this area, by the way, of similar stories of hardships, of death of children, and bereavement. And just in passing, say in 1901 there were 13 families living in the townland of Damone, which we're in now. It's a small townland. Of those 13 family names, only one remains, and that is Donald. Alfie Donald lives up here. I have to tell him he'll have to do something or it's going to die out. Okay. If you read your magazine, you know that during the war, Hughie Stratton used to read the paper, and local men would come in to listen to the news. And one man I'll talk about later on, Paddy Hanratty, coming out and seeing a brightness in the east, thought the Germans were burning Paris. He said Paris was aflame. Of, what would you call it, debate about whether it used to be part of a road that joined onto the Damone Road at the far end and continued down this lane here on the right and crossed what is now the canal and was part of a road that went on to Rathfriland. It's hard to believe that, but one of the things that the canal and the railway did, they completely wrecked the normal lines of communication. But this was, that's the opposition. Anyway.
You're getting a bit of a course.
This would have been busy enough, and just at this spot here, if you were to pull back all those bushes, you would see quite a lot of big stones, and that, according to my father, at one time had been a public house. You wonder if it was much traffic on the road to keep it going. All right.
Yeah.
Hello. Just where we are at here is quite a beautiful wee spot on the road here, and it dates back to 1869. On St. Patrick's Day 1869, a group of, I don't know how I'd call them, Fenians or nationalists, but a crowd of Catholics, probably as good a name as any one, left Poyntzpass after 10 o'clock mass with 2 lambeg drums and a fifer, and they marched along this old road and went down the road there. Okay.
It's disagreeing with you.
And they went down the lane there out onto the canal bank, along the canal bank to the Crack Bridge, crossed the Crack Bridge, went on to Glen Chapel playing their lambeg drums and fifing, went up and ended up at Innis's Gate, where they met a battalion coming from Den and Bar direction. They then turned on the road and the whole lot came back, crossed the Crack Bridge, went straight ahead where we started there, across right onto the main road. Down the main road to Poyntzpass they went with their drums and their fife. They went to Rice's Hotel where they refreshed themselves liberally, it said, and then they set out again to leave the Glen people home. back up this road they came. When they got to this point, two individuals up in the wood there, at the top of that hill, opened fire on them, and a man called Hugh McNally was hit and fell here. I don't know what happened to the rest of them at that point, but according to evidence given at the trial that later happened, and by the way, nobody was ever convicted of anything, Hugh McNally's brother was sent for the priest. The defending solicitor said, would he not have been better going for the doctor? Well, anyway, he went for the priest, and he didn't get a priest in Poyntzpass or in Tandragee. He went on to Mullavilly, but he did stop in every pub that he passed. Dr. McDermott was called. Hugh McNally was brought to Rice's Hotel, where Dr. McDermott examined him and pronounced him practically dead at that stage. Suffice it to say that that was 1869. McNally died in 1912. So the prognosis that he was going to die was right. The timing of it was a bit off. Okay, but this is where the shooting happened, just here. All right. Henry Robinson, the late Henry, and his wife, and Mrs. Robinson still lives there. But prior to them, it was Andy Liggett and his wife. And prior to the Liggetts, it was a family called Geddes. And I was interested in Geddes because later on we'll see a field which is known as Geddes' Hill. But the name died out. In the 1870s, 80s, that period of time, there was three Geddes', three family, two brothers and a sister, none of them married. And that is a recipe for, well, not disaster totally, but for certainly for extinction, because neither of the brothers could marry and bring a new woman into the house with a sister there. So one by one they died, and they left there had been obviously one of the Geddes family at some stage in the previous generation had married into the Liggett family of Knockanarney, because the Geddes left their place to their nephew or great nephew Adam Liggett. Adam Liggett lived in the house originally down that wee lane that we just passed there, and he lived with his brother and sister, none of them married. Again, the disaster struck, and they all grew old and all died, and the name Liggett was gone. But they left the place to their nephew Andy Liggett, and Andy and his wife Ivy lived there. I worked many a happy day with them at their hay, etc. They were very unlucky insofar as that they, first of all, they fostered two children who did very well. One of them was Carol, and she was living about Kilkeen, I think, still. Sammy went to Canada. They then actually adopted two children, Jim and Dorothy, and did very well. Also, sadly, Dorothy, driving a little Fortune tractor for the first time, came down the entry there. Mrs. Liggett standing at the door, watching her progress. Dorothy, as she turned the corner here, waved to her stepmother, tractor over to her, and Dorothy was killed. So this is just where Dorothy died. Everybody was really devastated for them because they were such a good couple, Andy and Ivy, but there we are. Okay? Huh? That's it. Yes, you go up that lane, but if you go up here, if you find a low place in the hedge, you'll see what the suggestion is.
About the girl who gives the walk. Where was that walk where we talked about the thing in there?
That across there, you know.
Look at the rabbits running back and forward.
The suggestion is that at one time the Damone Road came across there. Henry Robinson described that as the hearse road. Sorry, beg your pardon, man. We're not broadcasting.
Sorry.
Is that on now, John? Hello.
Yes.
Sorry about that. But just looking at that, we're talking about the possibility of Robinson's Lane extending across the fields there and joining up with the Damone Road. The Damone Road, you can see a bit of it shining yonder in the distance. And it said just across that field. I think Henry Robinson called that the hearse road. And at some stage it seems that that was a road, but the changes in the road makes life very difficult. Anyway, that's Damone, fellas. Now, Damone means apparently two bogs. Two bogs, and there are two bogs. There's a bog here on the right, and there's a bog round the corner there. Now, the bog down on the bottom of the hill here, and we'll see it better in a wee minute or two, is known as Her's Bog, and that Her is an interesting name I'll talk about later. The other day I was talking to this man and he was telling me that there was some sort of what would you call it, tunnel that ran from that bog round the hill there and joined up with that stream that fed that river.
There is, yeah.
Yes. The man who was telling me it is this man here. You tell me that there was a...
Was it like a culvert?
A culvert.
Across the front of Vincent Waddle's house.
Yes.
And it meets up with the river.
Yes, a culvert. And I think that probably again was the work probably of the canal people to try to capture the water that would be there.
Yeah.
We're always looking for water. Anyway, we're going ahead.
Is that still the same stream there, or is that a flax hole?
Sorry?
Is that still the same stream there?
Well,
That runs right round there.
it's a stream in a way, but there's no, it's one of those strange places. There's no natural outlet from it, you know, it seems to be landlocked. And in the winter time, the water would be right out to the edge of the you see the green rush is thick, that whole place would be like a lake,
Yeah.
you know, and the bog itself is very dangerous. We'll go down a wee bit further and then...
Wait till the jogger goes past. Come on, keep going. Keep her going. That's it.
Hello there.
Go ahead, jump.
Is that your dog? Oh, good man.
It's ready for the rest now.
I was wondering what was going to happen when we got to the other end of the road, where we was going to go. There were 35 families or 35 family names here. There are only 4 left of those 35. They are Little, Conbury, Devlin and Minnis. The other names have all gone. It's a bog, a very dangerous bog in fact. It was at one time a turf bog, was dug out, but it's full of very deep sort of holes. And the tradition is that the first person buried in the Catholic graveyard in Poyntzpass was drowned in that bog. It's known as Her's Bog, and the Her in question is the family of William Her, part of the famous medical pioneers. Work on Her played a very crucial role in the whole medical history by providing corpses to the surgeons of Edinburgh. Their only problem was that old people who were on their last legs, they hastened their demise.
Euthanasia.
they hurried them on. But at least we're bringing nice fresh remains to the doctor. But our came from up here at the top of this hill, but we have to go a little bit before we get there. Hole there, that was part of the whole flax industry. Lots of flax holes all through the townland. Better chance of getting it.
There must be some shade up this. Helena is late.
Late Helena.
As it's locally known, it's not very impressive. It's not the actual thorn itself is quite old and wizened. Now in 1834, when Bennett was writing up what's called the Ordnance Survey Memoirs, that was taking note of anything interesting or so forth. He referred to this as the burial thorn, and he referred to it as an extremely ancient thorn. That was 200 years ago, so it's a very, very ancient thorn today. In 1834, there was a semicircular wall of stones around it, not in this field that we were going up, but the next field. But over time, that sort of collapsed into disrepair. According to people who talked to Bennett, people had been buried there in the past. I don't know whether that's true or not. You can presume that it is. The stones that were around this wall, when asked why that was the case, people tend to make up stories to fit what they see. And there was a story basically that this was during penal times.
Thank
members of the Catholic Church going to Mass would bring a stone towards the day when they would build a church. I think that is a fairy tale myself. I think that the Bell Thorn is much, much older than the penal times. I think it's probably very early Christian times. Some of the stones that are left, and there's a few of them, believe you me, you would have been a fit Catholic that would have carried one of them to the
But there's Blaeberry Sunday where the people go up at Slave Creek, you know, at the Dramara Mountain, and they carry a stone, and it's known as the 12 Cairns.
Yes, well, I wouldn't doubt that for a moment, but the stones that they would carry,
Would be
you're
small,
talking about stones
yes.
that would be a half 100 weight, you know. So I doubt very much that they carry those to the top of the
Get a better story.
But those stones from up here, there are a few of them about, and I've often thought if the local history society could really galvanise themselves into action and gather them up and build them in some sort of a little cairn and maybe put a little plaque on this, because the fields on either side here have changed hands, and people wouldn't necessarily know that this was a very old and traditional place. The stones, by the way, that formed the wall were around the time of the start of the First World War, were carted down to Poyntzpass and were used to form a foundation for a yard in the village, and that yard is actually the foundation of what is today the Poyntzpass Independent Church, the one directly opposite the Church of Ireland. Okay, we'll go up and have a look. Well, that's the Bell Thorn there, and as you can see, it's actually, it's not very impressive from any side, but it's more impressive from the other side actually. But it's extremely gnarled, and you can see bits occasionally obviously fall off it, but over the time it's been there, it has withstood a good deal, and it looks in reasonably good nick. For all that, there's quite a good bit of growth on it. So I do think it would be a little project for the local history society to gather up those stones that have been left behind in the shock muck in there and put them into a wee thing. William Street, Scarva. That would be the next sort of kind of tree that has some kind of history to it.
Did he carry it in his memoirs?
No, Donovan unfortunately didn't do this particular area. He did Donegal Parish, he didn't do this parish. There's a man called Lieutenant Bennett of the Royal Engineers who wrote up, and he wouldn't have been as knowledgeable in terms of folklore and stuff like that as O'Donovan would have been.
Was great.
But he was nonetheless he was great, but not just quite O'Donovan. Yes. John O'Donovan was he was the man who did the Ordnance Survey members for Donegal area. All that whole area there was a tremendously energetic man. He was known as an antiquarian.
How old?
Okay. Well, I would say, you know, there's an awful lot of people in Poyntzpass area who wouldn't have a notion that that tree exists. So now you know it exists. I'm happy with that.
How old?
Any questions?
How old?
How old are you?
No, well, I know. How old is the tree?
Well, all I can tell you, Kieran, is that in 1834, which is almost 200 years ago, Lieutenant Bennett described it as a very ancient thorn.
So it's older.
So it's a very ancient thorn then. It's a very, very ancient thorn now. So I would say it would be
It's a wee bit older than you, not much.
Well, I got